Hello and welcome back to another EDH deck design video. This week I'm probably going to be recording a few experimental decks I had done and a few budget decks I had done, including this one. This is a temporary deck. I just wanted to run through a test and see how something worked out. In EDH, if you have not seen my bad Achroma Angel of Fury deck, I did a devotion deck full of enchantments. What I had done actually worked out, mainly because I was riding off the back of Achroma herself. So while parts of that helped me understand and see how things work in the long run, some questions were left unanswered. So I wanted to kind of take it a step further. Now, this deck right here is an enchantment deck, thoroughly through and through. Out of the 100 cards, including Mogis, the general here, there are 37 lands. There are 6 cards that are not enchantments, and then there are 57 cards, including Mogis, that are enchantments. It's just another aura smash face deck. Originally I had wanted to do a couple things, and I'll run through the ideas I had, and I'll just show you what I'm running now. Could also be classified as a budget deck. Even though most of the deck's foil, I mean, out of the 30 auras in the deck, 20 are uncommons. Or commons, I'm sorry. And then I don't think there's a single rare aura. It's just such an affordable deck to build that I would suggest it if you like what you're about to see. Although, keep in mind, enchantments and auras are generally not good against stronger groups. If white-green are consistent colors in your play group, then this is not something you should probably play. But here we go. This is Mogis. I was going to run Exava as the general because she is hasty and she's very offensive. Getting enchantments on her, especially Death Touch, on her first strike body is very good. What happened is when I was running her as the general, her aggressiveness tended to cause too much attention on my side of the table, and I was too quickly 2-for-1. So I went for a more passive, long-range deck build. So a lot of this is counteractive to what it's trying to do, but it's kind of the best that I've been able to get it to function so far. So we're running Mogis. He's an enchantment. That's the important part. There's lots of Constellation stuff in the deck, and I'll describe what that does later. But he himself is 4 mana for an enchantment creature god. This is nothing like my actual good Mogis deck. He's here just because he's an enchantment, and he's hard to get rid of. I'm not capitalizing on his effect. There is an enchantment that gives infect into a creature, so I could give him infect, and that's kind of funny, but it's very slow and not intentional. So he is there to give us a kind of a backup plan, maybe defensive. I do plan on swinging the deck, so I may actually swing with him. He's not really the focus of the deck. He just happens to be an enchantment, and he's hard to deal with. So let's stick Mogis over here. There are, I believe, 25 creatures in the deck total. 4 of them are not enchantment creatures. So again, this is very flavorful. Some of these are just so powerful I had to include them though. For example, Agent of Fates. Any kind of target to him, like if I were to enchant him with one of the 30 auras, or even bestow him with half these other creatures here, it's an edict effect to all the opponents. Each opponent is very good at multiplayer. And he comes out pretty early, that's good. And the other hero creature in the deck is where each opponent discards a card. Again, something that comes out pretty early. 3 mana is nice to see this early. I also like the high toughness on this one. Then these 2 also came from my Achroma Mono Red Devotion deck, where he is an all-star getting trample and +2/+2 for any enchantment on him. So, well, not any, but as soon as he's enchanted, he gets a lot bigger. And the other one is the Throng Golem. I believe there's a grand total of 4 artifacts in the deck, including himself. If he gets enchanted, he gets bigger, and lots of fun stats. That's actually it. Everything else coming up is an enchantment creature. So again, the big problem, even Thrawn Golem himself, these are the only 3 creatures I can actually survive on the field if something like an Aura Shards or a Bane of Progress hits. So this is a very delicate build. It's not very good. Honestly, if your opponents tend to play green-white, then this is just not something you want to bring to the table. I honestly, as soon as I see what they're playing, I just don't even bother picking this deck up. But everything else here, these are all enchantment creatures, so they will trigger a couple things, including Constellation and Bestowing, and then it's just a lot of fun stuff here. So Brain Maggot enters, he exiles a card out of someone's hand that's not a land. This is essentially a removal bait. because I will try not to put in auras on him unless I just want someone to wrath or target remove or something like that, kind of pointing focus away from my other creatures. Archetype of aggression is great because I have a hard time giving trample to some of my creatures. I'm going slightly Voltron here with 30 auras, so getting trample on them is good. When I was running, well, I'll show the extra cards I'm not running right now. When I was running Ixava, I was running the black archetype because it gave Death Touch, and she has First Strike, which is a nice combination. Then we have all of the Bestow creatures except one. There's one that I did not think was suitable for the deck. So this one's not always good. He's super cheap to bestow. 3 mana essentially to give a creature +2/+2, or I can drop him as a creature. The bestow cost really does kind of suck. But I mean, if the creature dies, then the enchantment that was bestowing him falls in as a creature replacement. So it's kind of interesting. In longer games, it's helpful to make sure I don't die completely from a wrath effect. But we have a 2 for a 2/1, or a possible 5 to enchant something for a 2/1. Just to give you an example of how terrible that bestow cost is, I'm main decking Unholy Strength. This is a card printed in Alpha Beta. The original Unholy Strength itself is 1 black to give a creature +2/+1, or I can bestow it for 5 mana to give it +2/+1. That's not good, but again, it's a super cheap creature I can get out early. Spiteful Returned is another one I actually like. Its bestow isn't that bad. The ability to make someone drain 2 before damage is actually pretty good, and I was learning this in Standard for a little bit in a little aggressive deck. Night Howler is one of the really good ones, where it essentially makes something like a Mortivore, without the regenerate, of course. But then, of course, he falls in after board wipe, which is also really good. Gnarled Scarhide is another one that's actually somewhat decent. Again, the +2/+1 effect, not so good, but this one only costs 4 to bestow. This one actually costs normally just 1 mana for 2/1 is nice. Herald of Torment is one of the absolute best bestow ones because it gives a creature flying. Putting this on Mogis is actually really great because the high devotion here, I mean, I've already got 4 of the 7 requirement to keep Mogis alive. And that also makes Mogis a 10 power. Then we have a Death Touch bestow. This one may not last in the deck much longer. This was in here mostly for Ixava, but making cuts here was awkward since most of the cards are absolutely terrible anyways. We have a First Strike one. This one was not in the deck when I was running Ixava, but since I took Ixava out, I went ahead and put this in. Again, 6 mana to bestow is kind of hurtful. 6 mana for Intimidate is actually pretty decent. If I get this on one of the monocolored creatures, it's nice. And then this one is interesting. It's mostly here for bestow as a +3/+3. I don't plan on discarding cards too much. I don't think in any of the testing I've done, whenever this is landed, I've never actually used this ability. This one's really good because it makes block harder, but again, it's a 7 mana bestow. This is the most expensive bestow creature, but for that block effect, it's kind of helpful. Then we have all the Constellation cards. I think I put every black and red Constellation creature in here. Some of them are not so good, like this one right here, just a small burn. I do plan on, well, again, all my auras, they're super cheap. Most of my auras have a 1 to 2 converted mana cost, so I can hold up a Constellation creature and hope that I untap with it and go crazy. This one is one, and then this one also it's a very slight. I like this one because it comes out early, has a nice defense. But the absolute best ones, well, not this one either. This one is just a generic one to help me get rid of graveyards. And this one helps me get through. It gives everything a creature Intimidate. So again, I can kind of get through for Voltron. Then again, it actually really helps on the Mogis there. But the really good Constellation ones are Doomwake because it's a pseudo board wipe. If I hold up a few enchantments and untap with a Doomwake in play, I can usually Wrath or do a one-sided Wrath. And the absolute most expensive creature in the deck is another one that I like holding up for in hopes of spamming auras, because I can usually just dump everyone's hand. If I have like 4 enchantments in my hand and I get her out and I'm allowed to cast my enchantments, then it usually just wrecks everyone else's hands. Because this is, again, each opponent. I really like that on the heroic guys as well, because they hit each opponent. This is usually designed for multiplayer. Again, the problem, as I'm running enchantments and auras in multiplayer, it's not a smart idea. The last 2 creatures are the gods. Perforos really doesn't do much for the deck. He is essentially an indestructible 6/5. I will most likely have the devotion to keep on swinging with him. The effect there, when a creature enters, I don't have a lot of creatures. I do have his hammer, The sucky thing, the Bestow creatures, when they fall into play, they actually don't change zones, so they do not trigger his ability. They're already in the same zone. They're not going to help. But then, of course, I got Urbos. Love the card draw. High defense. I mean, he's going to be a pretty good beater. Usually takes me to the end of the game. Let's go on to the ores. There are a total of 30 ores in the deck. I am main decking Unholy Strength. This is kind of the shitty card that really should not be in the deck. I just wanted to include it. I absolutely love this specific artwork. I mean, this is some of the most horrifying artwork I've ever seen. It is just plainly disturbing to see a demon splitting and growing, and it's just... I don't understand why they keep using... I guess it's... Something like this is kind of traumatic. I guess that's probably why they might not be using it for it. I don't know. I just really like this artwork. Then we have Hammerhand. Helps get usually just one attack through +1/+1 effect. Lifelink is really good. I like the +2 on it. Kind of a block tech. I can't... With this one, flyers can't block the creature. This is only 1 mana. So usually what I try to do when it comes to... I know I'm going to get 2 for 1 at some point or worse. So I usually try to hold on to something like this till I know I'm going to get a hit off. So this 1 red could literally be just a shock to the opponent's face. Because it's adding +2 to combat. Lightning Talons was not in the deck when I was running Exava, because First Strike really isn't that important. But the +3 is actually pretty nice in here. Inferno Fist is another way of kind of... It's a pseudo rattlesnake card in removal, and I like the pump. Volcanic Strength is great when I was running a Chroma with the enchantments, because I had all the Blood and Moon effects, and Mount Walk is nice. But not a lot of people play red and EDH, and if they do, they may have 1 or 2 mountains total in their deck. So it's +2/+2 essentially. This is one of the really best enchantments because I can spam its ability more than once a turn and make basically creatures unblockable. Deviant Glee is one of my favorite enchantments printed to date. It's basically a much better version of Unholy Strength, where it has a special ability of adding trample. And it's both uncommon. if you haven't noticed, every single enchantment I've pulled through here so far is a common. Every one of these is a common. This is also supposed to be the character in the Rakdos storyline. Suicide Girl, Murder Girl. One of the main characters they never actually printed a card of. Supposedly that's her artwork. I think it's Murder Girl. Whatever. Aspect of Gorgon wasn't here for Exava because the Death Touch is really nice. Madcap Skills is a fantastic card. I just now realized it's not foil, so I have to get one of those. It's again a really good block situation. Strength of Lunacy is another version of Unholy Strength, where it also grants Pro-White. The Pro-White is essentially the reason I'm running this. The Madness effect doesn't happen too often there. Arcane Teachings is an uncommon, actually. It's basically 3 to give something +2/+2. The ping effect doesn't happen too much there, unless the creature maybe already has Death Touch. Again, when I had the enchantment Gorgon that gave all my creatures Death Touch, this was good. Right now it's mainly there for the boost. Then I have the 2 Vows. These are kind of fun to put situations up. A lot of the enchantments coming up near the end are ways of making it so my opponents cannot block. But another good thing to do is make it so my opponents can't attack me. And these 2 do both that. Again, I got another Intimidate effect in the first strike. Then I have the 2 Urza enchantments. I love these. They both grant +2/+2 in flying. This one gives us essentially the Sangir Vampire effect, where I can grow it, and this one gives me Fire Breathing. This was really good in, again, a Chroma, where I had Nykthos and all sorts of Red Devotion and lots of mana. In this deck, it's mainly there for the flying. Fist of the Demigod is super good on Exava. And this one, I don't have any hybrid creatures other than Mogis himself. So I may hold on to this for Mogis. Only gives 1 devotion though, so that's the hard thing about enchanting Mogis, is it will most likely fall off from a simple Wrath. I do have some regeneration effects in here. I like Throw of Retainer because I can sack it anytime I want. It doesn't pay to regenerate. Then Skeletal Grimace gives a small boost, but also 1 black to regenerate, which is nice and cheap. Then I have a cute one. This is a pet card. I usually run this in mono black. The Shade effect is great. A lot of people overlook the entire second sentence here because it just essentially automatically reanimates the creature it enchants. I can put this on anyone's creature, including an opponent's. There was a card printed in Evasion, like Evasion Restored, I think, that did essentially the same thing. It's like 2 or 3 in a black, but it didn't even have the shade effect. Like this effect, both of these abilities are actually really good. This is kind of the same thing where I can return, but this one actually just puts it to hand. This one puts the creatures just straight up right back into play. This one returns the creature to hand. Now we're getting on some more of the techie cards, ones that don't give power boosts. This is a flash enchantment, where whenever it essentially gives the creature the ability when it connects to a player, I can destroy an artifact they own. And this one is super good. I love this one in the Chroma deck where I had all sorts of double strikers. This deck has lots of evasion when it comes to intimidate effects, so I can make people sack lands. It's not as offensive in this deck since I don't have the double strikers and a lot of the creatures are not as fast, but it still usually sets people back if they can't. Again, this is something that usually just warrants an immediate target removal to make sure I don't actually connect. This was mainly here again for Exava, but I mean I can give this to Mogis and make his ability cause infect damage. It's kind of a cute one. This may not last. The rest of these are cannot block enchantments. This one is in between. I could put this on my creatures, I could put this on the opponent's creatures. It has that really fun effect like Rancor, where if the enchanted creature were to die, then this enchantment pops from graveyard to my hand. Same exact thing, if the enchanted creature were to die, it pops to my hand. This one just makes a creature cannot block. I love the flavor on this card. Then we have a couple kind of tap down effects. Like these three all do somewhat very similar things. Where essentially the creature itself cannot either attack, block. This one's cute because it stops abilities sometimes. So for example, I can pay to make an Arkham Dagasson if they try to activate his ability, just essentially 1 to counter that ability. This is actually really good, although it does tax me and it may destroy itself if I tap out. This one is an upkeep tax where they have to pay 4 to untap the creature for 1 black. This is actually a really good card. And Melancholy is a shifted version of the blue one, I think, where again it taps a creature and they have to pay. Well, this one they don't have to pay. This is the one I have to pay on my upkeep or the enchantment goes away. But let's go on to the rest of the... There's a handful of extra enchantments that are not auras. I'm having fun with Possibility Storm. This is kind of a shenanigans card. The deck is already grossly underpowered. But just the absolute shenanigans of what this card causes, most of my deck does the exact same thing. It's all just creatures and auras. So I mean, I'm going to get usually a consistent pool here. But it's what this tends to shut down is target removal, which is also really good for keeping my stuff safe. This is another way of getting my creatures through. Giving a creature shadow is fantastic. One card just to help us draw some extra cards. I had the Underworld Connections in here, but I was afraid people would just keep targeting my land, and that's not good. Then I have the 2 artifact enchantments. Lifelink is a godsend, and it helps me recur some creatures from play for like a turn. Maybe if one of my Constellation guys got in the graveyard, I can recur it. This one gives her 1 haste, which is always nice with especially Mogis. And that's actually it. That was all of the enchantments. Everything left in the deck are these 2 cards and basic lands. Crystal Chimes is kind of our recursion card. As I said, there are 57 enchantments in the deck, including Mogis. So this could literally just draw, if for example, a late game, this is just going to recur almost everything from our entire deck to hand. And then Warp World is another goofy card that probably shouldn't be in the deck. This is the most expensive card in the deck. So most of the curve on the deck is around 3 to 4 mana. A lot of the auras are cheaper. And we have that 1/6 mana costing creature, and then we have Warp World. Again, this is clever because the only thing I don't like is this won't hurt. This is the only spell in the deck, so I'll never whiff when I cast this. The only thing I don't like is it puts the Bestow creatures into play, so I can't like stack them onto another creature. But of course, since 99 cards in my deck, I'm not going to whiff anything. I'm usually going to have at least 1 pretty fun creature to have before it just immediately dies. Let's go on to the lands. As you saw, the only normal artifact in there was the Crystal Chimes, not even bothering with a Soul Ring in the deck, which is again a mistake. 37 lands. Most of these are just generic fillers, really. So I got the Filter Land, the Temple Land, There's a shock land. This isn't really supposed to be in the deck. Again, if I weren't running like the Blood Crypt and this, then this would be a $30 deck or less. The Pain Land, the Buddy Land. This one's really good. I'm trying to put this into almost all my decks because it's a 2-for-1. Usually it just helps you fix your colors almost as soon as it untaps. Did not bother putting the Shinka in here because I was running Exava when I fixed the lands. May end up putting it back in here to give Mogis first strike. Usually that's not necessary, but it's a thing. But again, not quite Intimidate. Fears are usually a little bit better than Intimidate. But this on this on Mogis is usually makes him a 3-hit kill. The rest of the lands I'm using the Champions foily ones. All of the Artwork 301s are in my Rocka deck because it's my favorite. I've been thinking about, like, I just love these mountains so much. Like, this one is probably my second. It's a hard call. This one is probably not my favorite, my fourth favorite. This one, I love the bridge, but this one's awesome too. I don't know. I just really love these mountains. I'm probably going to keep on collecting them. I don't really need them for any more decks. But then we have all the swamps that go. The swamps are decent too. I just love Avon's artwork. But that is the current list. Let's show you the extra stuff that didn't quite make it. There are a few other hero creatures I wanted to run. What I initially actually did with Exava before I decided to go Constellation and Bestow is I wanted to run the Spectres, because there's about 9 to 11 Spectres in black and red, and giving them any kind of power boost makes them harder to deal with, and I could get them out very quickly. It was literally just a Voltron style with Spectres. The problem was that was very, very similar to my normal Voltron decks, and it wasn't really thematic with the enchantments. It wasn't doing what I wanted to test with. So I took them out. Same thing here. This one's really good. I can active treason a creature every time I enchant him. This is another enchantment creature that didn't make the cut. She's kind of expensive and doesn't really do what the deck needs. This is the only Bestow creature that did not make the cut because it's fire breathing. I don't have a way of making all my mountains or lands tap for red. And this is the last enchantment creature. She's very expensive for what she does. Really good if you're running Exava because she has first strike. So first strike, death touch, general is nice. This is really good. Probably should put it back in the deck because I like drawing cards. I don't know. I really like this in standard, and EDH it's most likely gonna get my land destroyed. Then we have some extra enchantments. +3/+1 and is black doesn't really do enough. Lifelink is great, but it doesn't give us the ability there. Really only happens when a creature dies, so my creatures are more likely to die than the opponent's. It didn't make it. This one's really good for the 1 mana to regenerate. It's kind of a mind rot on an enchantment, but I play this in multiplayer, so this is usually just not a good card to play, and it's kind of expensive. There's the Ordeals, really good on early creatures, but I don't have any 1/2 drop creatures. Well, many. Kind of a removal, but really I wish this was -1, -4, because that would be really good for removal. Yoke of the Damned is one of my favorite cards because it's really funny and it puts up a lot of fun situations. It doesn't really do enough, although in EDH. Parasitic Implant may make it way back in the deck because it is a pseudo removal, just takes a turn. I had Conquer in here so I can take control of the land for a while, and I was running Enslave. But it's just they just didn't quite make it. I may put this one back in. Last one's Bestial Fury. This is left over from a Chroma. That's actually it.